Hello YouTube, my name is Sean Connors and welcome back to the Outsiders channel, and in this review we're going to be looking at the 7th edition Quick Start rules of Call of Cthulhu. Chaosium promised many changes. Let's look at this 45-page PDF document to find out what the changes are. If you'd like to follow along with this review, you can see the website here listed on this slide, chaosium.com. Please do download the PDF, it's relatively easy to do, and follow along. The PDF itself is beautifully laid out. It's great quality all the way throughout. Love some of the pictures. Even includes a small mini adventure at the back, which we'll touch on at the end. Overall, a wonderful little simple free download, making it a joy to follow along. One of the first changes you notice is on page 6 of the PDF, and that's to do with now having an array for your stats rather than rolling them. The array is used, and they are percentage rolls, rather than what it used to be in Cthulhu, where you'd roll certain dice, combination of dice, 3d6 plus 3, 3d6 straight down, or 2d6 plus 6, that sort of thing. That's all gone. And now we have an array. Let's quickly go through the array. So, in the array you have a 40, 3 50s, a 60, a 70, and an 80 to place into the stats the way you want. I'm not really sure about this change. I'm not even sure if it's necessary. I get where they're going. Obviously keeping everything percentage based does seem to make some sort of logical sense. But is it really necessary? And what do the changes do? And how do they affect the gameplay? Let's just consider that for a moment. I gave it a bit of thought about the array system, and I suppose there are a lot of modern games that utilise it. It does make sense. Putting it to percentages does fit in with Cthulhu, and I suppose it's a fair change. And it isn't that difficult, if you don't like it, to take it out and use the original system as written. So again, I suppose that's the strength of it. You can get quite a lot of mileage out of it. The only thing I found a little odd, but I understand why they've done this, is they've kept luck a percentage roll, which is 3d6 times 5. Placed your array of stats, you have to work out the half value and the fifth value of that particular stat. So for example, if you put 40 into strength, the half value of course is 20 and the fifth value is 8. So therefore very quickly you have your percentage score. Now these are important because those half and fifth values actually are useful to the GM to work out target numbers of something extremely difficult, i.e. being the 8, or something quite tough, being the half value, or something that's relatively routine, being the full value. It's a good system, and one that works well. Let's look at this important part of the rules in a little bit more detail. There are 3 types of rolls you can make on skills: a regular success, a hard success, or an extreme success. Regular success is the percentage number as is. Hard success is half the percentage number, and extreme success is 1/5 of the number. If you are asked for a hard success, i.e. half the target number, let's call it 40, halved, 20, and let's say you just failed, let's say you rolled 30, you could ask the GM for a push, as you were quite close. What a push is the fact that you're able to justify why you're allowed a second roll at it. The GM, if he gives it, or she, will warn you that should you attempt this and it fails, something dire will happen. I like this touch. I think this is very in keeping with Cthulhu. It puts some ownership and power into the player's hands, but at the same time warning them should it go wrong, something pretty bad will happen to you. And I like that touch. I think that's very nice. Another nice aspect of this system is that you can use bonus or penalty dice depending on the situation. So for example, if the GM indicated that the climb was difficult because it was wet, there wasn't many handholds, and it was under duress as the players were being chased, he could insist that each person make a penalty roll, and that would incur doing the following: rolling 2 dice, 2 percentile dice, as in illustration above for penalty dice, and a normal d10, and taking the worst of the 2 rolls. That's pretty nasty, very in keeping with Cthulhu. Or of course the reverse might be true, that the player could take a bonus because of the way that he described it. I really quite like that. It adds a lot to the game, and again is very fitting. Sanity and luck remain relatively unchanged, but the small changes that do exist, I actually love them. A good example here is luck. So for example, if you've got a roll under your luck score, that's fairly straightforward. But now there's a small change where it could be a keeper can call for a group luck roll. So because there are more than one character involved in the scene, he can make the player with the lowest luck make the roll. A lovely change, really like that. Making every player important, and particularly the player that is actually the weakest at the scene is the one that influences it the most. I really like that change. It's a nice change. Sanity has just been cleaned up. It's exactly as you would remember it, and I'll just quickly cover that. Now Sanity will have one of normally 2 numbers affecting it. That'll either be 0/1d6 or 2/1d10, and what that really means is simply this: on the 0/1d6, if you make your roll you lose no sanity. but if you fail your roll, you take 1d6. The 2/1d10 means the following. If you make your roll, you still lose 2 sanity, but if you don't make your roll, you lose 1d10. So it gives you a good indication of the type of sanity in play. If an investigator loses 5 or more sanity points as the consequence of a single sanity roll, he or she has suffered a major emotional trauma. The player must roll d100. If the result is equal to or less than their intelligence, the investigator fully understands what has been seen and goes temporarily insane. When you fail a sanity roll, the keeper gets basically to play your character's next action. This is a huge change, one that I really love. Very in keeping with the game and quite difficult to pull on a player normally under most circumstances. This way the GM can decide, in fact, under the fear you squeeze the trigger and the gun goes off, and who knows what repercussions that could have where you're meant to be quiet. So I love all that stuff, and I think that that's another lovely touch. The rules do cover off insanity in a little bit more detail than I'm going to here for this review, but needless to say it's been cleaned up, beautifully presented, and I do like the look of the changes. Let's take a look at occupation and skills. The changes here are small but very significant. You take a starting occupation and you now have the following values that you can assign into the core key skills to that occupation. 70%, 260s, 350s and 340s. Assign them how you want. You also get a 20% non-skill background increase. Now what that means is that you pick 4 skills not associated with your work background. Those skills values rise by 20%. So for example, you have, say you were drive car, which starts at 20%, it would now actually start at 40 because it's one of those that you've chosen outside of your work. It increases by 20. So it's a lovely change, giving the player a lot of flexibility. It's easy to implement. Be great fun to do this online. So I think all round the changes here really work, making all the characters shine out in their particular career and also taking away quite a lot of the maths that existed before that in some ways did bog the game down. I like the changes. In essence, the combat section of the book has been very clearly cleaned up. Everybody now reacts in a given round based off their dex score and working down from there, but there are specific rules around when somebody has readied an action, who goes first, to attempting certain things in a given round, what you can and cannot do, and how that impacts on play. Don't get me wrong, Cthulhu combat is still as deadly as it ever has been, and the changes here are small, but they do make the system more streamlined and do improve the way the combat flows from what I've seen so far, having playtested it. Just wanted to add an extra piece in here on combat. In the rules that are given, it does state that the more shots you fire, the more inaccurate the gun becomes. So i.e., after the first shot, you actually take a negative dice on every subsequent shot that you fire. This is a nice touch, making the weapons feel very inaccurate. And there is a risk-reward at play here that I kind of like. And very in keeping for some of the early periods, 1800s, 1920s feel for the game. And I can see how they could tweak that depending if it's a more modern game that you're playing so you don't have the inaccuracies. But I do like it. It's a nice twist and a good change. And we'll see how they implement it in the final rules. The PDF is finished off with an adventure called The Haunting. This is a fairly much a standard Call of Cthulhu adventure, but it's very well done in the PDF. Some nice handouts and a good starting story, particularly for someone who's not really used to what Call of Cthulhu RPG is all about. Overall, I'm impressed with everything you get in this PDF. It shows you the new character sheet layout, which is excellent for explaining the rules very succinctly and simply. Overall, it's just a streamlined version of Cthulhu, but it loses none of its charm and it doesn't take anything away, and that is an incredibly difficult balancing act to achieve, but they've done that. Overall, it's left me hugely impressed. I'm massively looking forward to seeing 7th edition in all its glory. It's a definite still 9 out of 10 for me for Cthulhu. It's always been one of the classics and remains so. And I urge you to download this free version and have a look for yourself. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders. Till the next time, take care of yourselves and happy gaming. Bye-bye.